Hi, my name is Poonam Velagapudi, and I'm an interventional cardiologist at the University of Nebraska. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about recruiting women in clinical trials in today's presentation. So I've been fortunate to be involved in an initiative called Take Her Health to Heart, led by multiple groups across the country, AdvoMed, physician leaders, FDA, and others, to promote equitable enrollment of women in clinical trials to improve their cardiovascular health. And the purpose and goals of this group is to educate PIs and site staff about the importance of including women in clinical trials, to understand the important participation barriers for women, and provide practical strategies to promote the recruitment and retention in clinical trials. So let's first talk about the current trends and disparities of cardiovascular health among women. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in women. You know that about 44 million women in the US are affected by cardiovascular disease, and it kills one woman every 80 seconds. Yet, many physicians are underinformed of women's cardiovascular disease burden, including cardiologists. In a report shows less than 20% of cardiologists are aware of heart disease as a greater cause of death in women than in men. Now, women are also vastly underrepresented in clinical trials. On the right, if you look, the purple bars or the pink bars represent female trial representation, whereas the violet bars represent female disease prevalence. And you can see that the disease prevalence is much higher than female trial participation. Now, why does this matter? It really matters because cardiovascular disease in women is not the same as men. They have a different presentation of disease. They have anatomic differences, and they have a different response to therapies as well. So there's numerous initiatives already do exist for helping increase recruitment of women in clinical trials. However, you see that the percentage of women enrolled in clinical trials are quite low, less than 30% at times. And in a review of women enrolled in 78 pre-market approval FDA applications for high-risk cardiovascular devices between 2000 and 2007, there's a major lack of sex-specific safety and effectiveness data. And there's been no improvement over time in enrollment of women in cardiovascular device trials. So what are these barriers? What are the barriers for women to enroll in clinical trials? They can be multifold. They can be physician sources or patient sources. Some of the patient barriers are that women have these unique barriers to enrollment, and men are 50 to 33% more willing to participate. What are these barriers? Women are more likely to have some trust concerns. There's fear of experimentation or trust, and there's transportation and convenience issues. Women are likely making decisions differently and need more time and information, and decisions are influenced by family and friends and influenced by altruistic considerations, as well as there's a difference in the risk tolerance. Under stress, women probably take fewer risks, and they have a perceived greater risk of harm from trial participation. Now, there's multiple provider barriers, such as these misdiagnosis of disease, given that women have atypical symptoms, or there's a lack of awareness, subjective judgments, biases when approaching certain patients, this competitive dynamics, fear of losing patients to site PIs, logistical burden, lack of administrative support, and poor communication. So we can look at the tips and tricks of how to overcome these for the research team to enroll more women in trials. Important to create awareness. You have to create an increased awareness of cardiac disease in women and for participation opportunities. Educate to reduce misperceptions about this participation risk, and focus trial designs to examine trial protocols to increase the number of women who qualify and actively working towards this goal. But there's other strategies, such as introducing patients and providers to the impact of sex-specific symptoms by improving awareness, having targeted education campaigns, and leveraging social media networks to get the message out. Educating referring providers goes a long way, helping them refer patients to sites that are enrolling patients, or overcoming biases through education, educating and discussing compliance with patients, including grant budget with financial sponsor support for assistance with patient logistics, etc. Also important to introduce the potential benefits of enrollment with participating women and dispel misconceptions, for example, education and reassurance, adequate time for discussion with patient, and also including influential family and friends at these visits to help women understand these trials better so they can make a better informed decision. Now, it is also important to provide patient education materials describing the research process and the benefits of participation and leveraging social networks to encourage women to participate. You can also provide tools for patients to find research opportunities. These go a long way in providing that necessary information to women to participate in these clinical trials. Also, explaining logistics upfront and providing additional reading and more time for decision making is really important. So, how do you retain these women in clinical trials? Is by you examine the trial design elements and protocols and simplifying the trial burden and increasing the number of women who qualify. So, in addition to that, making it easier for participants, such as fewer required follow-up visits, make phone or online follow-up possible, home visits, or weekend hours for required follow-ups, and allowing primary care to complete follow-up or requesting transportation reimbursement from the trial sponsor. So this is the virtual cycle, such as success begets success. Women cardiologists need to be engaged to have more women in clinical trials. Historically, we know that only 4.5% to 6% of interventional cardiologists are women, and they're 3 times as likely to experience discrimination. There's a critical need for greater diversity of physician leadership in trials and academia. There's a recent publication by Dr. Riza et al. Who have shown that higher number of female authors were associated with a higher enrollment of women in heart failure trials. And we will be talking to Dr. Reza after this presentation, but that's a recent publication that's important to note. And we also need participation by multiple stakeholders, not just physicians and patients. Patient advocacy and public announcements are important, but so are clinician and researcher education and leadership by various societies, journals, meetings, and giving the funding that is necessary for enrollment of these women, and also informing guidelines and inclusion in guidelines of female related information. And then research enrollment targets and sex-based analysis by FDA, industry, journals, etc. These are all really important. And then there's multiple advocacy groups that are willing to help, and there's endless resources that are available for patients as well as providers. And for additional information, you can refer to clinicaltrials.gov or healthywomen.org. And acknowledgements to Catherine Clark and Alexandra Lansky, who are both here to join us for a quick discussion after this presentation, and to AdvoMed, who has played a major role in this initiative, Take Her Health to Heart collaborative initiative. And thank you, and we'll open it up to discussion.